Hello chess friends and welcome to Azadov's chess channel and welcome to a very interesting tournament that's going on now these days. It's the CCC season 15 preliminary round. It's a sort of a test tournament in which Stockfish is playing really fine, and Stockfish is in the lead, crushing all of the other engines. Lila C0 is not performing so well, so it's really an improved version of Stockfish again. And this CCC season 15 will follow, of course, in the next couple of months, but they play always this first is test games, then also some other tournaments, and this Stockfish is really incredible. Again, I wanted to show you a great attacking performance in the Gruenfeld defense, and for those who have trouble maybe to play against Gruenfeld, this is really a great game. So the time format is 1+1, so it's a bullet game. Incredible how Stockfish calculates everything, even in this fast time format, and it played against this Rubi engine, and this Rubi engine isn't so popular, maybe it's not also in this elite level of top engines, but still it's a powerful engine, and Stockfish showed to you really again some great attacking skills. So let's check out now the game. So we're starting with the round one and fight, of course. D4, so the Grunfeld. As I said, if you have troubles, this is really instructive one, because there are several lines that bothered me from White's perspective, and now again I analyzed them with again some Stockfish engines, and now I think I could have a good preparation against the Grunfeld. Although I will lose some games, of course, but at least I saw that some of these lines are really possible, so that's why I wanted to show you this game. So knight to f6, we have c4, g6, knight to c3, and now d5, the Grunfeld. So c takes d, still common theory, knight takes d and e4, knight takes c3, b takes c3. We have now bishop to g7, and this is the normal idea, because first of all black is allowing the pawn chain here in the center, then black is trying to crack the pawn chain with potential c5 moves and really break it, and with queen to a5 really to attack the dark squares all over the board. So in the game, knight to f3 was played by Stockfish. I used to delay this move, knight to f3. I most of the times played something like bishop to e3, bishop to c4, knight to e2, because I was sometimes a little bit scared about the spinning idea. When I watch this game now, I'm not sure if these lines that I used to play are better. I will try now maybe this knight to f3 idea, because some of these moves bothered me really, and I wanted to show which moves they were and how you should proceed here. Here's c5, the normal idea. We have bishop to e3, and now queen to a5. Queen to d2, still common theory. If black, for instance, plays c takes d4, then c takes d4 will happen, and if queen to d2, I don't think you should be scared about this line, because we can take with many pieces. We can take with the bishop, we can take with the knight. But in my opinion, I still like the king idea here with king to d2, because this game could maybe transpose very fast into an endgame, and when an endgame happens, you don't want to have your king so far away from the action, so you want to have your king centralized. So that's why I like this idea, although the Stockfish engine will suggest you another move. But in my human opinion, I still think that I would play king to d2, because I'll at least know what I'm trying to do here. Now I basically am trying to really trade off more pieces and go maybe into an endgame where I could have maybe these two centralized pawns. So as I said, taking here by black on d4 is not such a powerful idea. In the game Castling, played by Rubi, and we have now rook to c1. Getting use of the c file, because there is this tension, of course, c takes d, and then we could get use of our rook, and also we have some tension on the bishop on c8. So bishop to g4, that's the move that bothered me the most when I used to play different setups against the Grunfeld. I was a little bit scared about this bishop takes f3 double pawn ideas, and if you play something like bishop to e2 and h3, bishop takes f3, and maybe bishop to f3, then this bishop on f3 is always a little bit blocked out by its pawn on e4. So that's the line that bothered me. But here I saw now this line played by Stockfish with the move d5, here knight to a6 played by Rubi, and now h4. It's really incredible how Stockfish attacks here. Again, I'm pointing out, I wanted to see again what happens if now bishop takes f3 happens. We have g takes f3. The pawn structure in front of the king is a little bit weakened, so that's why I was, as I said, a little bit scared about this line. I have to say it like this. I'm not sure where should I proceed? But the problem is now for black where to counterplay. Rook to d8 seems like a natural idea to attack the queen and try maybe some e6 moves, open the d file and really attack the queen. So here h5 is a possibility. After potential e6, we should simply continue to push here. Bishop to h6, e takes d5, now h takes g6. That's the line that you should memorize in this particular line. So after something like d takes e4, if black really desperately is trying to open the position on the d file, then you have g takes h6. You see first the check, the discover check on the h file, and then the queen comes into the game. So black is a little bit slow here on the attack. Will need an extra tempo in order to make something to happen. So black is going to be checkmated in this line. So here after the move h4, so you see h5 was played, but this gives now white the opportunity to get out with the knight out of this positional. Pardon me, let's go back. Here white can go out of this positional mess with knight to g5, so we are not vulnerable to these attacks anymore on f3. Knight to g5, a very nice move. In the game, rook to d8 was played, and now f3, finally kicking away the bishop. This was a really annoying bishop, and the good thing by Rubi was that it didn't play the move rook from f to d8. That's always sort of mistake that you can make. You see, after potential f3 now and bishop to c8, you wouldn't have any more the rook connection. So it's very important to sometimes realize what are your opponent's ideas. So here in this particular move order, rook to d8, after f3, bishop to c8. You see, still we have the rook connection and still we have this active bishop. So rook to d8, more accurate move than rook from f to d8. So very, very important to realize that in your own game. So g4, here Stockfish plays really the Stockfish style, cracking the position immediately, creating this flank attack. Here h takes g4 was played, and one of the most important ideas, attacking ideas of this types of attacks, where we're trying this queen and bishop battery against fianchetto bishop and maybe get the queen somehow to h6 and creating really this dangerous checkmate threats on the h file, is sometimes to sacrifice the pawn. We could maybe take it, but you see, we just want to continue our attack. So h5, we're not scared because after g takes f3, nothing special has changed. Still we have the opportunities to play h takes g6, and we'll finally open the position in front of black's king. This pawn on f3 could be also used as a defensive piece, because one of the cool defensive strategies are that you can hide behind your opponent's pawns. It could be also a really nice defensive idea, and I've talked about this idea in one of my defensive strategy videos. So you can also check out the link I'll show you at the end of the video. So defensive strategies, I've covered, I believe, 10 videos. How to defend in chess. You can also check out the series. It's very, very instructive. So here after the move h5, Rubi tried rook to d6. The idea is, of course, to get another defender into the game. After h takes g6, we have rook to g6, and it seems now that black has regrouped, that black has defended. But again, Stockfish plays a very, very interesting idea. f4 first, cementing the knight. Queen to a4, attacking the e4 pawn, and now rook to h5. This is this principle of the attack. Whenever you don't know with which piece to play, always evaluate the strength of your pieces and which piece could be improved. So here you see the queen and bishop battery is a very powerful one, so we could maybe move the pawns and get this bishop and queen into the game. The knight has still a good activity. This rook has maybe a bad activity, but at least it's a good defensive piece. This bishop aims, of course, against the pawn on c3. So the only pieces that needs improvement are the rook here and the bishop somewhere, bishop to d3, or for instance, if the position allows it, maybe even to c4. So it could be also a good square, because in this particular case, bishop to d3 and bishop to c4, okay, still this bishop would be blocked out by its own pawns, but these are flexible pawns. These pawns can be moved further. If these pawns will be blocked out by our opponent's pawns, then of course placing the bishop behind our pawns is not such a good idea, but these pawns can roll with e5, d6, so these pawns are mobile, so that's why this bishop's activity is not something that should worry us. So here in the game, rook to h5. Rook lift, very nice here by Stockfish, again creating new attacking possibilities on the 5th rank. We have rook to d8, finally this idea by Rubi to create at least some kind of a counter attack on the d file, and we have bishop to d3. This move is very important. It has a double function, of course. It covers the queen, at least for a while now, because after e6, we are not immediately vulnerable to our opponent's attack on the d file, but also this very flexible e5 is very tricky. What shouldn't bother you, here are some f6 moves. We can always use the square on e6 in order to cement our knight. Even if black takes, then still we would create maybe here a very nice fortress on light squares, kicking away this rook. So this rook is a little bit loose here on the board. So in the game, queen to h2, played by Stockfish. Very nice maneuver, sacrificing the knight. Here f takes g5, but it's not the point that we want to get this pawn. It's simply this idea to get this pawn rolling e5. Very important move. What to do now? Let's see now possible squares for the rook. So these squares are not possible to escape. So the only square that we can escape with the rook is rook to b6. But the rook to b6 loses immediately. That was part of Stockfish's great calculation. Here, rook takes g5. That's the main threat. What we want to play is, of course, queen to h7 and then queen takes g7 checkmate. So that's why black would be forced to play something like king to f8, but still queen to h7, you cannot do anything here, and it's game over. So what Rubi did here after the move e5, played simply queen to e8, sacrificing the rook back for some material. Of course, white will need to give up the light square bishop. What Rubi was hoping for, that white will give up 2 minor pieces for the rook, but it's not a problem here. f5. Here Stockfish creates really this pressure with his 3 pawns, and the main line that Stockfish is now suggesting, which is maybe the only good move, as I was analyzing the game on my Stockfish engine at home. What Stockfish is suggesting here is the counterattack with rook to d5 after f takes g6, still rook to d3, and here you see you cannot take the bishop. That's the main problem. You would have to give up some material. So rook to d5 with some other lines, but if you take the bishop, that's not an option here, because you're going to be checkmated with a cool checkmate here on h8. After bishop to h8, we will have queen to h7 and then queen to h8 checkmate. So, but Stockfish is suggesting here that you should take first the pawn and try something else then after that, so trying to regroup. But okay, as I said, here I think it's a lost game. I'm not sure what to do anymore. So in the game, after rook to f6, after the move f5, rook to f6 was played, so not this rook takes d5 idea. So Stockfish now finally grabs this very important pawn, and you saw now again these tactical threats are around this h7 square. We have rook to f5 and now king to e2. So here Stockfish doesn't even take the rook, which is very cool, simply keeping his attack. If you try something like rook takes bishop to f5, bishop to f5, rook to f5, then maybe again this idea of rook to d5 would work. Still, white is better, of course, because white is up the exchange, but it's still a more complicated game, I think, to play. Still, this knight will find a way into the game. This bishop is attacking here the e5 pawn. We have it defended at least for a while. So that's why I liked more this idea with king to e2. Stockfish is simply keeping the pieces on the board. Here g3 was played by Rubi. We have rook to g3. Rook takes g5. It's not an option immediately, because first you get this very annoying check with queen to h7. So that's why g3, we have rook to g3, and now queen to h5. This was the defensive strategy by Rubi, and now we have queen to h5 after rook to h5, now rook to g1, and finally Stockfish has this very nice rook battery on the g file. Still a piece down, but you cannot protect anymore the bishop on g7, and now finally Stockfish has really a comfortable game. So king to h8 will simply take the bishop. We have rook to h2, king to e1, and now king to d2, keeping everything protected. Here after the move knight to c7, we have c4, and Stockfish has fixed everything. Now we have 2 very nice centralized pawns. And now after potential e6, you see we can pass through with the move d6. So in the game, rook to h2, we king to c1 was played, rook to h1. Here rook takes e7, rook takes g1, and now bishop to g1. This is now completely winning endgame here for white. The bishop pair is simply too powerful. These 2 centralized pawns are too powerful. White is a pawn up, has a good activity with the rook, and in this top engine level, it's of course game over here for black. So rook to d7, Stockfish goes now into simplified line, grabs some more material. After bishop to b6, we see e6. Now the pawns are rolling. Here bishop to a4, and now king to d2. The king goes of course towards the center. We have c5, knight to e8, and now simply d6. There's nothing you can do. These bishops are crossing all over the board. The knight activity is of course restricted. Here knight to d5, again another problem. If you try knight to b6, nothing dramatically has changed. We'll simply play e7, d7, and something like d8. Again, the promotion. So knight to b4, we have bishop to e4, and now here this idea d7, e takes d. Now king to f7, and here king to e5. Here it was a couple of dubious moves here. You see Stockfish can promote the queen whenever he likes, but here still he made a couple of chess jokes sort of, and after king to g7 the game was over. But as I said, in the previous couple of moves the game was already over, as Stockfish managed to get his pawns connected. So okay, great game. You see 1+1 bullet game. Stockfish played really incredible game here. Stockfish is in the lead of this preliminary round before this CCC season 15. So we'll see what will happen when Lila C0 maybe will improve now, and still this will be, I think, a very intense season, because these engines are evolving. Of course, we'll have also the Stockfish NNUE. We'll see how it will play also in the future. So again, we can expect some really great and brutal games like this. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. It was really instructive chess game, how to beat the Grunfeld defense. If you want to see more games like this, played by Stockfish, Lila C0, Alpha 0, and many more, you can also check out my best chess games of played by computers. And if you want to see the humans battling, you can also check out my best chess games of all time series. Here's also the link. And if you want to see how to defend in chess, check out also my defensive strategies in chess. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best of